to my garage. We got it all warmed up right now, and the late model is back. That's right, if you folks tuned into the last episode, it featured the Shuzuki, and we pretty much accomplished nothing. So that went exactly as expected. But with this, we got some pretty major decisions to make. First off, is there still some life left in Crackers? Can we maybe bring the old girl back around and get it back into race shape? Or is there another option?
So this is Kermit. This we bought shortly after we wrecked at Kalamazoo at Super Shoe as a possible replacement for Crackers. And as you can see, we have a lot of work to do. There's some funkiness going on right here. This right here, I don't like the way this comes together and ties into the front. This thing has been reclipped before. The one plus side about it is if you look right down this rail, man, that is arrow straight. So that's perfect. I like that. In addition to this little bit of front end funkiness, God, we got a lot of work to do. You know, this bar right here, I'm not sure if that's going to stay or go. There's kind of this quasi-moto thing going on right here. Not really sure. Here, I'll show you exactly what I mean. I don't know why. What? Who? How? I've got no clue. So that's probably going to go. But in addition, this chassis has the old 3-link setup, whereas Crackers, the other chassis, that is set up for a more modern, active 3-link rear suspension. So this is going to have to get updated before we can do anything, which means I got to do a lot of learning in a short amount of time. Oh yeah. And the biggest thing with this, we call it Kermit because of, well, how it is. I'm not superstitious, but they say racing green race cars is bad luck. And the last time I had a green race car, we got caught up in a guy that blew an engine in front of us, wrecked the front end of the car, and took us out for half the season. So we got to paint it. I can't leave it green.
And yet there's even a third option. And this one I might catch a little bit of flack about. You see, the back end of Kermit, as you just saw, it needs a little work. It needs a little attention. The back end of this has already been updated. It's all ready to go. Now, the front end of Kermit, on the other hand, well, that's all nice and narrow straight. The front end on this car is about as straight as a wet noodle. So, do we take and cut the front end off of this car and graft the front end off of Kermit onto it? I don't know yet. Tell me what you think. Put it down below in the comments. I'd love to hear from you. By the way, appreciate all the comments from the last couple of videos, all 3 of you. Awesome. Love hearing from you folks, so don't be afraid to comment down below. You see, the thing about this car, aside from the front end being a bigger mess than Britney Spears' Instagram, most of the work's already done. The brake lines have been run, the electro gizmo-y crap's done, the decking's on, the back end's already updated. It's most of the way there. So we got to figure out what's going to be the best balance between time and speed. Because while there's only a couple months left before race season, we've got a ton of work to do no matter which route we go. On top of that, we're doing this on a budget. So really, I got to sit down and I got to figure out what's going to be the cheapest, what's going to be the quickest, and what's going to have the best outcome out of all three. You know, what's going to be the fastest, cheapest, quickest. And in racing, none of that goes together. So, let's get started.
We need to get all of the damaged stuff off of it, which means all these door bars, that back panel, the very back tail panel. This panel right here's got to go. And then I got to start pulling all of the front end off. We got to try to get this ready to yank the engine out. Once we do, we can get a good look at the chassis and kind of decide how we're going to move forward. Now, if you want to build these out, okay, so what we have here is what looks like the electrical aisle at Pep Boys just threw up. And we've got this right here, sure, yeah, that's fine, perfect. And we got like this right here, that goes nowhere. And, you know, how many grounds do you need? Wow. No matter what, if we use this car, we can't leave this. This has got to get fixed. As I'm sure you've probably noticed, I've got my not-so-little guy helping me kind of in and out, depending on wrestling and practices and stuff like that, but yep. Okay, take this shock off. Take the upper control arm off, we'll get the spindle off, calipers. Then we can start working on lower control arms, sway bar, all of that all the way around. Okay? Get to it.
Now, with as hard a hit as this car took on the left front, I want to double check the hub and the rotor and make sure that they're still square, they're not bent or warped or anything like that. And I'm going to do it a really kind of simple way. Just going to set it up here on the edge of this table, go ahead and hang the rotor right off the edge, and I'm going to spin this around. Now, as I spin this around, I'm going to watch this little bit of daylight right here. And what I don't want to see is watch it get bigger or smaller, indicating that this rotor is warped and it's moving in and out. So it should stay pretty consistent. Other than a little bit of movement by me, she's actually staying pretty true. So that tells me that this rotor isn't warped and that the hub's not bent or anything like that. So we're still good there. Unfortunately, I don't know if you heard, but I was getting quite a bit of bearing noise from this when I was spinning it. So that tells me I gotta replace the bearings on this. If I'm gonna do this on the left front, I might as well do it on the right front. And honestly, it's kind of a good idea to do it every year anyways. It's just cheap insurance. Last thing you want to do is go into a corner, have the bearings lock up, and yeah, your day ends in a hurry. All right, so we already got the spindle and hub assembly off. You can see that this control arm or drag link or whatever you want to call it, that's pretty well bent. This has already been replaced once at the track from the first incident. When we didn't have quite the right one for it. You can see it's actually got 2 tabs here, and it's designed to have something bolted in between. We just stuffed a bunch of washers in trying to get by. So I either have to replace this control arm or cut this off and weld on a thicker single tab to adapt it to this style setup. So one of the things that's actually been taking quite a while with this, and it's kind of surprising, is a lot of the bolts that I'm taking off look like this. So what this tells me is this car, it's seen some weather. I'm guessing the previous owner must have let it sit outside quite a bit. I'm seeing a lot of stuff like this. It's just seized up, locked up, fighting me, stuff that should come off pretty easily. It's unfortunate. Carrying on. Moving on. You know, I had someone ask me the other day in regards to being a budget racer. Well, why don't you just get sponsors? Well, a couple reasons for that. One of them being, sponsors are very hard to come by. Second one being, well, let's be honest here. We got inexperience, an old chassis, a small engine, and an even smaller budget. We're not exactly going to be cooking around the top 5 with this thing consistently. We may get lucky and back our way into, back our way into a top 10, but somebody who's going to want to advertise with a race team is going to want one that's going to be consistently running up front and putting their name in victory lane. And we just don't have the means for that. And there's not many companies that are looking for the guys in the pits that are probably having more fun than anyone else. So that's a large part on why we don't have any major sponsors. However, that being said, I have come up with a little bit of a way if you want to join. Created a GoFundMe page. It should be linked in the description on this video. And if you would like to join in on the fun and contribute, you're more than welcome to. If you don't want to, that's fine. I caught some flack about it, people begging for money, but I look at it as it's just sponsorship on a much smaller scale. All right, this side's off. Quick recap where we're at. Right now we're in the shopping list mode. We got all the front end off of the car. All the ball joints, uppers and lowers, they're junk. They got a ton of play in them. They're wore out, so those are going to have to be, we're going to have to pay some attention to those. Now,
I know earlier I looked at that rotor on the left side, and there we go. Need to get it in focus. And while it didn't look like it was warped or anything, I did notice there is quite a bit of discoloration along the vanes there. And it's got just a little bit of a lip. This one's not too bad, but it's got a little bit of a lip to it too. So just to be safe, I'm probably going to end up buying new rotors, because the last thing I want is to have one of those, specifically that one, crack and come apart on me. This car's got 3-piece Coleman hubs on the front, which is really nice. You know, these 2 aluminum pieces bolt off, and then you have your center section here. Everything on this thing's adjustable. It's fantastic. Thankfully, both of them are good. That isn't. We need a new upper control arm. That's actually borrowed. We talked about this lower control arm here. Again, I either need to buy a new one. Most likely what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut that off right there, and I'm going to weld a new thicker tab, and we're just going to make that one work. It's going to be a lot less expensive that way. All the heim joints, all the rod ends on these, they're toast. They're all seized up. The sway bar mounts, well, I bought those brand new. So those are good. This is one of the shocks that it came with. This is a conventional setup, just a regular coilover spring and shock. And after the first incident, we ended up switching the front end over to these. This is actually a borrowed shock from my buddy Bob. And it's a tie-down setup with bumps. And what that does is, as the chassis settles, it'll settle down to the preferred ride height and ride along on these little bump springs right here and these little packers that you put in here to set your heights. And what that does is it keeps your chassis travel to a minimum. Keeps the front end of the car sucked down. It also keeps stuff like your front end geometry right where you want it to be, thus making it faster if done right. Now, when we put these on the car, I love the way it handled. I like the way the front end settled into the track and the way it cornered. I didn't really get a ton of laps hammered down hard at speed, but I could already tell I like this setup. So I've got a set of tie-down bump shocks already coming for this thing. That's just a giant box of disappointment. As you can see, chassis is getting there. Next thing we need to do is we got to pull the engine out, the transmission. The transmission's buried somewhere down in there. And in order to do that, we have to deal with not only the Pep Boys stuff we got going on back here, but this exhaust system. And as you can see, it's a maze of pipes coming all together. And the reason for that is this system is designed to be a scavenger system. As one exhaust goes through the piping, it's going to create a vacuum effect on the other pipes and try to pull that exhaust out when that valve opens. At least that's my understanding of the theory. But we're going to have to figure out how to get all this out. Most likely, we're going to disconnect it here, and this whole kind of spider contraption is going to go right out with it. Well, unfortunately, I think we're going to call it a day. As they say, it's tired and I'm getting late. Moving on. I think I'm going to go inside, warm me up a pizza, put on Caddyshack. We got a lot done on the car today. Stay tuned for part number 2. It's going to be coming out shortly. We're going to pull the engine out and we're going to decide, is it going to be, are we going to be able to revive this car? Is it going to be Kermit, the car that's outside right now? Or is it going to be some sort of weird kind of Frankenstein combination of the two? Don't know yet. Stay tuned to find out. In the meantime, appreciate you watching. If you like what you see here, make sure to like, share, comment, subscribe, please. And yeah, we'll see you next time.
in the meantime, my name's Flipper. Thanks for coming to my garage.